Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So last week I did a video on the leaked letter from Cabinet Minister for International Trade, Liz Truss. I've also referred to this letter a few times recently with the Brexit proposals being announced this week. Now, a few days ago, the full letter was published in Business Insider. And although reading the full contents doesn't really add anything in terms of the concerns, the language used and the response to it is very revealing. And so that's what I'd like to discuss now. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So just to bring people up to speed for those who don't know what the letter is about, Liz Truss is worried about 4 impacts as a result of government Brexit plans, or lack of them, as the case may be. The first one is being challenged legally by the World Trade Organization as a result of being unable to carry out the checks that we need to be doing. Second, Christmas time extended for smugglers with the open borders. Third, having no effective way to assess or collect tariffs due. And fourth, weakening the union with Northern Ireland as a result of having to apply tariffs on everything headed there from Great Britain. Now, all that was known based on the reports using excerpts last week, but specific things around the letter when it was published in full I thought were quite interesting. It's a mixture of being genuinely seized of the dangers of Brexit that the government publicly are denying, and as well as a bit of continued ignorance at the end on her part as well, I feel. Now, first of all, one of the more interesting things about this is not really what's written in the letter, but how it was reacted to. So, reports suggested that Dominic Cummings rebuked Truss for the leak. Yes, Cummings, an unelected bureaucrat telling off a minister of the Crown. That's where we are now. And rebuking her for the leak. Now, not for the letter, not for the contents of the letter, for the leak. So the assumption is that she leaked it. Now, if you work on the principle that she did leak it, this was not just leaked by a member of the civil service who feels it's in the public interest to know this, but actually she wanted its leaking. That is really interesting, because that would mean that Liz Truss, Cabinet Minister, wanted this information herself out in the public domain. And she was right from the start a Brexiteer. She's not someone going along with it just for her political career. She was fully on board with the idea of it. And that is interesting. So that would suggest to me that she worries that she's going to cop for a lot of the blame. Now, you know, when reshuffles happen, it has to be said Liz Truss is not a secure member of cabinet. She obviously doesn't want to be made the scapegoat when everything goes wrong. So not only did she want to write a letter to, in this case, Michael Gove and Rishi Sunak, and she also copied it to Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, but she didn't just want it on record that she had these concerns. She wanted the public to know that she had these concerns and that she'd raised them well ahead of time. And she also starts the letter by commenting on the announcement, which has since been made, but this was ahead of it. So she says, "Dear Rishi and Michael, I am writing to you to set out my key areas of concern on border policy risks and readiness for the end of the transition period, and to seek your assurance that these concerns will be addressed. This letter comes in advance of the border operating model publication on 13th of July, where the UK's proposals for the border will come under renewed scrutiny, both on the domestic and international stage." So what she is saying here is, so she already knows what they're going to announce or what they're planning to announce. She is saying, you're going to get criticised for this. This isn't going to stand up well to scrutiny. That's what she's saying. She's saying, you know, internally, that's basically opposition parties, more specifically Labour, are going to be tearing holes in this. And also internationally, people are going to be tearing holes in this as well. She's potentially trying to get them to change some of the things they're planning on saying. Whether that happened or not, we will not know, because we do not know what at the time she wrote this letter had been planned to say. Was it the same, or were any changes made? Then she goes on to the first concern, the staged approach and WTO challenge. So she says, when we exit the transition period, the UK will be vulnerable to WTO challenge regarding its border regime. That's because it's bang against rules. This is especially relevant concerning the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol and the application of the staged approach. Because this idea of a staged approach where we can't carry out full checks at the end of the transition period, at the start of 2021, but we aim to do so halfway through 2021. Yeah, that might be the government's policy, but it's against international trading rules. It's against World Trade Organization rules. It says these measures could significantly impact on the UK's reputation at the World Trade Organization. In other words, we're going to look like clowns internationally. That's not, given that it's her job to try and drum up international trade agreements, that's not going to help her whenever she goes abroad to meet her counterparts, they'll make her put on the clown shoes and the big red nose perhaps as well. These measures could significantly impact on the UK's reputation at the World Trade Organization. And I would appreciate your assurance that full border checks for EU GB goods will be implemented no later than July 2021. So, as I said last year, she's basically saying here, you make sure you can guarantee this for me. Because if I have to go abroad and wear the clown shoes, I need to at least be able to say, yeah, do you know what? But it'll definitely be okay in July. And I need to not have to carry on wearing the clown shoes after July. I'll put up with it for 6 months, no more than that. The second thing, you can read the rest of it yourself. I'll put a link in the description below to the article that's got the full letter. But I don't want to go over things that I talked about last week. The second thing with the controls at the border. I recognise there are challenges to delivering tariff declaration systems on both EU and rest of world imports. No, mustn't forget those. Although she says she recognises that. That must be new because she didn't seem to recognise it when she was campaigning for this. To ensure we can develop appropriate handling plans for national and international stakeholders, it is essential that my department has a clear view of operation delivery plans, timescales and risks going forward. Now, what I think this is alluding to, obviously, we know that Dominic Cummings is organising a very centralised government where even cabinet ministers are not really in the know a lot, and they're certainly not allowed to make policy decisions. This seems to be one of those cases. She's basically saying, look, I've got to go out and deal with international trade negotiations here. I can't do that if I don't know what's going on. I need information here. You're keeping me in the dark. So that's what that suggests to me. It says this is particularly important for controlled goods at those EU-facing ports where the infrastructure to implement controls does not currently exist. Given the legal, reputational and security risks, I would like assurances that we are able to deliver full controls at these ports by July 2021 and that plans are in place from January to mitigate the risk of goods being circumvented from ports implementing full controls, which is a long-winded way of saying smuggling. Can you tell me what you intend to do about smuggling? Because although you'll be talking, and he has talked, about the world's most effective and secure border, in actual fact the government plan is to open it up completely. 3. Tariff assessment and collection. I have some further concerns about tariff collection due to the staging in approach, especially around the increased likelihood of circumvention, smuggling, where rest of world traders could import their goods via the EU. This would undermine the effective operation of our trade policy. Now, what she means there, again, we've warned about this for years. What that means is, in order for us to carry out trade negotiations, we have to be able to say, well, you give us, these concessions and we'll give you these concessions. We have no concessions to give if people can just get their goods into our country. No problem at all. Makes no difference. I mean, we were talking about having policy of just not having tariffs on a load of stuff anyway. Makes no difference if we put tariffs on or not. If we can't collect them, if we can't assess and collect them on goods in the country, then they're not going to be applied. So countries will just look at us and, well, we can already get our goods into your country. I don't know how, I don't ask questions, but they're getting into your country, no problem. So you don't really have anything to bargain with. So she understands that as well. The government refused to accept this publicly, but this government minister understands that. 4, the Northern Ireland Protocol risks, absolutely key, this one. It says, I understand that the digital delivery of the dual tariff system, both EU and UK tariff, in Northern Ireland is a high risk, and that HMRC are planning to apply the EU tariff as a default to all imports in Northern Ireland on the 1st of January 2021. This is very concerning. You're not kidding. As this may call into question Northern Ireland's place in the UK's customs territory. Now, you note here that her emphasis is not on the way this is going to knacker UK businesses or UK trade. No, her concern is only for what people will think of it. But anyway, I mean, she's certainly right to call into question the fact that this will weaken the union. It says failure to deliver the UK tariff digitally in Northern Ireland would have political, legal and reputational risks. Political, of course, because Northern Ireland is very divided in terms of where it would like to be. At the moment, it's in a bit of a hazy foot in both camps. Some people would like both feet in the same camp, but they disagree on which camp they would like that to be. Legal, of course, because we're just applying tariffs to goods that shouldn't have tariffs placed on them. And again, it's like, it's all right saying, oh, we're just going to put tariffs on everything going to Northern Ireland. But of course, if it was only ever going to Northern Ireland from Great Britain, you can claim it back. Well, that's still extra paperwork, which means extra costs. And also, how do you prove, if you haven't got the systems in place, how do you prove that those goods didn't have a risk of ending up in the EU? How do you know that? How are you going to prove that you should get your money back? And reputational risk, because again, we look like clowns. Internationally, we look like clowns. We won't be able to manage trade. We will be a supposedly G7 nation that cannot even manage trade at our own borders. We are going to look like imbeciles. And it won't be an unfair judgment either. It says, I am keen to see HMRC and BPDG, which is the Border Protocol Delivery Group, I think, delivery plans. So in other words, she hasn't seen the plans. She wants to see these plans. She hasn't seen them. She's a cabinet minister. Again, they're not disseminating information in cabinet to those ministers who need to know. Specifically on how both the UK and EU tariff will be digitally implemented. Because remember, they keep talking about the fact, oh yeah, we can manage the border digitally, even though no such system exists in the world. Doesn't mean to say no system could exist at some point in the future, but it doesn't exist now. And it ain't going to exist anytime soon. But then it says here, including detailed mitigations and where there are risks to delivery by 1st of January 2021. These plans, and this is where the ignorance comes in, these plans should also include details of when commodity code divergence will be delivered for the whole of the UK. They never will. They never will. Does she not understand the withdrawal agreement that she voted for and that Boris Johnson signed? The way that they did away with the backstop was by ensuring that there will never be commodity code divergence in Northern Ireland from the UK, from the EU, sorry, it will from the UK. So the idea, so what she's saying is, yeah, okay, she thinks that Northern Ireland remaining aligned with customs arrangements with the EU is a short-term measure. And again, you know, I can understand some people maybe thinking that if Boris Johnson went around all the people to get them to support, because this is what Steve Baker of the ERG was saying a couple of months ago, that, you know, they voted for it because Boris Johnson told them that he was just going to tear up the withdrawal agreement later on. Is she still of that view? Is she still of that view? And how can she, on the one hand, be talking about the reputational risk of not following WTO rules, and on the other hand, she's saying, well, when are you going to tear up this international treaty that you signed then? In good faith, supposedly. Absolute madness. And then she ends up, as we fast approach the end of the transition period, we need to ensure that the UK border is effective and compliant with international rules, maintaining our credibility with trading partners, the World Trade Organization and with business. I encourage the continued close cooperation of officials in our departments to achieve this. In other words, can you start telling me stuff, please? I am copying this letter to the Home Secretary. So there it is. That's the letter in full. And those are my thoughts on the little bits that wouldn't have come across in the excerpts last week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.